This is the AEW Dynamite January 22, 2025 full show results video, which takes place at Knoxville Civic Auditorium and Coliseum in Knoxville, Tennessee. The show opens with commentary welcoming us to the show and Tony Schiavone in the ring, and he introduces first Will Ospreay and then Kenny Omega. Ospreay thanks Kenny for joining him today and says he's glad he's not dead. He can't remember the last time they were in a ring without throwing punches, but he needs him to know he has nothing to do with the Don Callis family and he was trying his damnedest to stop them last week. He says Omega came back at a bad time. Jon Moxley's running the world title scene and he wants to fight his way over there, but he keeps getting dragged back into Callis family stuff and he knows they've had their differences and they don't like each other. Then Kenny grabs the mic and says the last time they fought was at Forbidden Door, where Ospreay nearly broke his neck and stabbed him with the same screwdriver Don used months before, and as far as he's concerned that makes Will know better than him. And why did he do it? Because he was trying to prove that he's the best. Well, not only did Omega not believe he was better than him back then, he sure as hell doesn't believe he is now, and it took diverticulitis nearly killing him to show people that Ospreay even exists, so congratulations on being number 2, and if you're asking for help, no chance in hell because he'll never trust someone like Will. Ospreay gets in his face, but Don Callis appears on the stage and calls them prima donnas, but Omega rushes him and Don falls back, letting Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher do his fighting for him. They overwhelm Omega and Will thinks for a moment before rushing to his aid and picking Fletcher off and dropping him with a corkscrew handspring kick. Mounted punches in the corner, Konosuke takes Ospreay from behind, but Omega is right on him with a dragon suplex and the Terminator dive, except Kyle cuts him off with a super kick in the middle of the ring. Fletcher goes after Ospreay on the floor, kicking him over the barricade as Callis goes to ringside to help Takeshita kick Kenny's face in. Kyle Freight trains himself over the barricade to take Will out, but Ospreay reverses him into an internal barricade and hammers him with punches until Lance Archer arrives to beat the aerial assassin down. The camera goes out behind the bleachers and we see Ospreay hurting on the floor as Archer picks him up and throws him into a trash can. Will recovers and he and Kenny work together to suplex the Murder Hawk monster through a merchandise table. Cage comes back over and he and Fletcher work on Will while Takeshita takes Omega back out through the crowd. Back out into the arena, Kenny starts getting the upper hand, but Konosuke cuts him off, front chancery, fighting over it, Brian and Kyle taking Ospreay through too. Referees and security finally appear to sort things out. Will hops up and climbs up onto a balcony as Kenny climbs a lighting truss, hits Stereo Orihara moonsault from high places with a bad camera angles. Ospreay helps Omega up. They climb the lighting truss together while Don and Kyle regroup and lick their wounds. Kenny says everybody saw what they did to Callis boys and the next chance they get they're gonna put Don 6 feet down under. And speaking of down under, he has an idea. Will wanted an apology and maybe he should apologize. He should have trusted Ospreay from the beginning, and at Grand Slam Australia, and he wants him and Will against Fletcher and Takeshita. And it's been a while, but one more time, goodbye and good night, bang, and now hit his music cause he's scared of heights. Cut to Death Riders backstage, Jon Moxley standing with Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir, and he says they bring you the best of the best tonight with Pac in the main event, and Adam Copeland went to sleep in 2011 and woke up in a world he doesn't understand, where the animals are faster, meaner, and smarter, and they'll be happy to throw Copeland's meat on the pile. His neck is hanging on by a thread, just like Bryan Danielson's was. Darby Allin had a death wish and he gave it to him. And maybe Adam's next doctor's visit will be a worst-case scenario, and he won't lose any sleep about it, because there's too much work to do and they're building a future. Then we saw a match between Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, versus Private Party, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, for the AEW World Tag Team Championship, and the result of this match was Hurt Syndicate defeated Private Party by pinfall with a spear from Bobby Lashley on Isaiah Cassidy, becoming your new AEW World Tag Team Champions. Toni Storm is interviewed backstage when Harley Cameron pinballs into camera wanting to wrestle in Australia. Storm says there's no reason she can't wrestle in Australia, and they talk about throwing shrimps on the Barbie and what is or isn't a knife and so on and so forth. Back from the commercial, Jeff Jarrett is interviewed, guitar over his shoulder. Before he can say anything, Karen Jarrett rolls up and pulls him aside and tells him to remember what they talked about. She didn't like him getting into the mud with Maxwell Jacob Friedman last week and she doesn't want to see it again. He says he knows and he's got it. Jeff Jarrett makes his entrance and gets on the mic. He says he was driving and he remembered one of his great mentors, Jerry the King Lawler. He was having a match before Jerry and the King was watching and Double J got his ass kicked physically and verbally and he threw in a few verbal jabs himself. He got to his dressing room and Lawler came in behind him and shut the door and got in his face and asked what the hell he was thinking. Jerry said you never get in the gutter like that, and Jeff now says sometimes it's good to come home and remember who you are, and MJF is gonna find out exactly who the last outlaw is. They're gonna settle this southern style, no lights, no camera. He's gonna take him out to the woodshed and beat his ass. But enough about Max. He wants to thank the fans for believing that he can win the title again, and he calls Jon Moxley out to talk. Death Rider's music hits, but Claudio Castagnoli cuts Jarrett off from behind and lays him out. He says nobody gets to Jon Moxley without going through him first. He'll give him one piece of advice: stay out of their business. Claudio leaves through the crowd, but Double J calls him out and tells him to turn his ass around. He tells Castagnoli he'll have to kill him to stop him, and Moxley is his target. So how about this: if he beats Claudio next week, he gets his title shot. Castagnoli says beating him lifeless is an interesting proposition and he'll see him next week. The next match happened between AR Fox versus Shane Swerve Strickland. We see that Ricochet gets up on the apron with the scissors to run interference, but Prince Nana runs him off with a pipe. The result of this match was Shane Strickland defeated AR Fox by pinfall with the Swerve Stomp. Post-match, Ricochet gets on the Tron and says you take risks when you think it's okay to bully and embarrass somebody, and next week everyone will be forced to hear everything he has to say, and there's a lot he has to get off his chest. Isn't that right, Prince Nana? He's holding scissors to Nana's throat and says he could gut him like a fish, but he needs him alive to tell Swerve that this may be his house, but there's a new landlord in town and rent is due. Learning Tree have a New York Minute for us and recounts their loss to the Outrunners and Will Hobbs, and says it's only a learning moment if you learn from it, and he asks how Big Bill is going to show he learned from it. Bill steps forward and says Hobbs may have won the tag, but he can't beat him, because he's the biggest, baddest man in this entire industry, so on Saturday, he's coming to find Powerhouse. Maxwell Jacob Friedman makes his entrance and gets on the mic, and he calls Jeff Jarrett out. From the bottom of his heart, he deserves to give every single wrestling fan an apology after his actions last week, but if anybody deserves an apology, it's him. Let's face it, when he offered to help Double J win the title, it wasn't because he believes in him, it's because he thought he'd be easy to manipulate and to beat. That Jeff actually thinks in 2025 that he's gonna be the next AEW World Champion goes to show he's about as senile as he looks. He says Jarrett thinks if he just tries hard enough he can have a longer career, but wrestling doesn't love him anymore. The fans don't love him anymore, and he's gonna learn that you're better off making a deal with the devil than defying him. Then Hangman Adam Page interrupts him and stares Max down until he leaves the ring and gets ready for his match. Then we saw a match between Hangman Adam Page versus Tyler Shoop, and the result of this match was Adam Page won the match by pinfall with a lateral press. Post-match, Hanger hits Angel's wings, and then comes Christopher Daniels, carrying a microphone and wearing a neck brace. Page walks up to him and asks if he wants his ass beaten again, and Daniels says all he wanted was to be a friend to him, but he sees now that he messed that up. He let his ego and insecurities escalate this to the point where he accepted the most violent match against the most violent man. He's gonna regret that for the rest of his life, because after that Texas death match, that last buckshot lariat added to all the damage to his neck over the years, his doctors have advised him to never wrestle again. So he's here, face to face, to tell Hangman that he wins and won the last match that he'll ever wrestle, and this is goodbye. He's sorry and he hopes Adam can be happy, he says, patting Page on the chest and walking out through the entrance tunnel. Then Hangman shoves the camera out of his face. Renee Paquette interviews Mercedes Moné backstage, and she says she's a global champion now and she can't wait to see who jumps on the Moné train next. Harley Cameron rolls up with an acoustic guitar and sings a song to challenge Moné for Grand Slam. Mercedes refuses the challenge and storms off, and Renee tells her it was a good song, but Harley is nonetheless disappointed. The next match happened between Jamie Hayter versus Julia Hart, and the result of this match was Jamie Hayter defeated Julia Hart by pinfall with Haterade. Post-match, Hayter gets on the mic and says she respects Hart for marching to the beat of her own drum, and no matter who she surrounds herself with, they're up one each, so she's willing to give her the rubber match whenever she's ready. Powerhouse Will Hobbs and tells Big Bill he'll be waiting for him in the parking lot on Saturday. Back from the commercial, Shane Strickland cuts a promo on Ricochet and says he feels big and bad and he better, because that's what it's gonna take to beat him, and in 2 weeks the Lion gets hands on the rodent. But maybe, just maybe, he'll catch him a little sooner than that. Brody King, Buddy Matthews, and Julia Hart get a video package explaining the post-Malachi Black direction for House of Black, promising no leaders, just violence. In the main event of the show, we saw a match between Adam Copeland versus Pac, and the result of this match was Adam Copeland defeated Pac by pinfall with a TKO. Post-match we see Death Riders backstage and they've got Cash Wheeler duct taped to a chair. Dax Harwood and the Rock and Roll Express too, but they delivered concerto on Ricky Morton. Death Riders make their way to the ring to surround Copeland. They put boots to him, and then comes Jay White to save Copeland, but that damn numbers game wins out and Moxley chokes Adam out with the Bulldog choke as they force White to watch. They leave the babyfaces laying, and the show goes off the air. How much you would rate this week's AEW Dynamite show? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe the channel, and thanks for watching the video.